radio is broadcast on LSL Podcast Channel. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel.
Okay, first of all, Raymond is the one who always makes me watch this because invariably I've forgotten about it. No, I am blaming you. I'll never get this time back. I never watch this stuff. I've never watched this stuff. I was over at a friend's house with the kids, of course, Sunday night. It's not a school night, is it? So we were out of the, you know whose house we were at, Raymond. So we were at their house. Oh, I know. Oh, yeah. It's the wine's being poured. Oh, no, the wine never stops. But
Children and wine, it's a wonderful combination.
No, they went home early. Okay, thank you. Mother of the Year award. But then I started getting texts from Raymond. Are you watching this train wreck? I get home. And, oh, no, actually, then we all turned it on at my friend's house. We all turned it on, and we started watching it. Do we have Stephen Colbert singing? Do you have any singing Stephen Colbert? Raymond, we went from having some of the great openings of Emmys past. Like, I went back and looked back to the 70s. Of course, I was going back to, 1978, 1976. Mary Tyler Moore wins in 1972. Like, all of these classic performances. And then we have to deal with Stephen Colbert, who isn't funny when he's not playing Bill O'Reilly, by the way. He's not funny at all, unless he's channeling the role of Bill O'Reilly, and that was how many years ago. And so he comes out and he tries to, they managed to work Nazis into the opening number.
To an opening of an Emmys. An inquiry? Inquiry?
Inquiry, is that, how do you rhyme inquiry?
He didn't, don't worry.
No. But Raymond, look, you are the one who came from this world of acting all those years ago. So you tell me, to whom are they speaking other than to each other? And I would also say that a lot of people in the audience didn't even like it. Do you notice they kept panning? They kept going to the audience. That one time they went to Seth Meyers. He looked like he wanted to come on stage and rip Colbert's throat out. The time he was referencing Seth Meyers, and who's a big liberal too.
It was an ugly evening. And you know what it is? It's people navel-gazing and saluting themselves. And there's no audience to speak of. The audience is shrinking.
400 channels and nothing on. 400 scripted tele. Who's what? If you told me there were 10, I would say, well, I don't know any of those 10.
The highlight of the evening is when poor old Norm, what's his name, came out with Carol Burnett, and you had all the old monuments coming out, and everyone applauded because they're the only people anyone recognized.
Did Norm Macdonald come out?
No, not Norm Macdonald. Norman Lear.
Oh, God, Norm. What is Norman Lear known as Norm?
We're very close. I called him Norm.
I missed that. I was so tired. I just had to turn it off. But the shocking thing to me is how narrow their audience has become. The era of television, which I think was the greatest era of television ever, was the 1970s. Okay, I don't care how I've dated myself. I grew up on television, so yeah, my parents shouldn't have let me watch half these shows. But guess what? They were better shows. So this was the era of All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Maude.
MASH.
MASH. I hated MASH. That was so liberal.
I know, me too.
That was an anti-war
The Carol Burnett
disaster.
show.
Carol Burnett. I mean, these were classic, and even the kids shows. Nanny and the Professor, Brady Bunch, Partridge Family, I Think I Love You. Oh, come on. Those are all classic
songs. But Laura,
songs.
remember,
what?
We had 3 channels then.
And better shows.
And everyone watched these shows. You had 70 million people tuning into a primetime show.
So there was a reason to kind of celebrate because the common culture what meant something. We had a common understanding. And there were certain things, even though it was a very polarized time, we had the beginning of the great real division in modern politics with the Vietnam War. And so in the Nixon and all that was happening. But there was something, we managed to actually put on entertainment that cut through a lot of this. Had some tinges of politics around the edges. I mean, obviously Archie Bunker was different because that was just the armchair kind of bigot, but the lovable bigot guy who was actually in his heart a good person, but he was just on the surface. He was just going to clear cut everybody. But there wasn't this politics. You didn't get beaten over the head with politics from the beginning to the end of the broadcast or from the beginning or the end of the show.
So many talented African-American nominees. Jeffrey Wright, Viola Davis, Samira Wiley, Uzo Aduba, Anthony Anderson from ABC's Blackish.
Why did he have to identify that?
And of course, Bill Maher. I assume he's black since he's so comfortable using the N-word. I don't know.
Oh, there was a bit of a... See, now the humor is so politically correct, they didn't know quite how to... You see, you hear the hesitation.
Not sure when to laugh.
There was a kind of but we're talking about this. I'm telling you, my listeners don't watch this. How many of you tuned in for 1 minute of this last night? 855-40-LAURA. I bet none of you watched it. We'll hit some of the real lowlights later in the show, just for entertainment purposes. I said to my guys, this is only for ridicule purposes. No people, as far as I know, no one watches these shows. No one cares about these shows. These celebrities are beyond overrated, with the exception of... I mean, who, Raymond? I saw you tweeted out one of your classmates from NYU.
Sterling Brown from NYU and Carol Burnett. I said, these are the two highlights of the whole event. And then Carol Burnett, highlight of my evening, Carol Burnett retweeted and followed me. Now that is an accomplishment.
Wait a second. Carol Burnett retweeted you? I hate you. She did? That's great.
But let me tell you, the difference
there's no one like her anymore.
What we saw last night and Carol Burnett... She unified the nation around humor and laughter, and we could share together in our foibles and have a great time doing it with the whole family. This is alienation entertainment, what Colbert served up last night. We'll get into it later, but it makes you feel bad for the things you believe and maybe your political position, and no audience wants to be put in that position.
It's meant to make you feel bad. It's meant to intimidate. It's humor meant to intimidate, which I find to be really twisted. It's meant to intimidate and eliminate you, frankly, eliminate your kind, eliminate your thoughts, eliminate your beliefs, demonize them to such an extent that all of the cool people sit around just, all they do is jawbone about how bigoted all the Trump people are. But from my perspective, what I don't understand about that is, you are limiting your reach as a comedian, but I guess they just don't care, Raymond.
They don't care.
It's so ideological with them. They don't care that they're slicing half the population out of their, out of their entire orbit. So there's no possibility for them whatsoever. I mean, they in fact, they've said they don't want the Trump. They don't want Trump voters.
Yeah, but that's half the country. And they keep saying, he didn't win the popular vote. Well, he'll win the popular vote at your box office. You don't win the popular vote any week of the month.
Well, and look, I don't want to do our entire segment on this because there's really important things happening. Who gave Sean Spicer the advice to go to the Emmys?
Oh, no, we're going to talk about that later. That was really...
Even Melissa McCarthy seemed embarrassed for him. Did you see her face?
Right.
She's like, "Ugh, why are you here?"
Yeah. He didn't know that he was the butt of the joke.
And he also stepped on his own line. I mean, no.
Well, he's not a performer, Laura. So I don't know why you put yourself on a stage like that when Colbert's got all the cards.
And why dignify these people with your presence? Why? So you're going to read the lines that some Trump-hating fool wrote for you? And you're going to get up there and they're going, but they were laughing at him, not with him. That's the... He didn't ask my opinion on this. I would have never allowed him to go. He's trying to expiate himself, perhaps, from the sin of working for Trump.
But you don't do that by confirming the sin caricature leveled against you.
Right.
Stupid.
By the way, I was running in the woods. Don't you love that segue? I was running in the woods yesterday.
And you ran into Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I ran into Hillary. Said, "Love the new haircut." She does. It's a pixie. It's kind of a whimsical pixie cut, don't you think, Hillary? It's almost like Sandy Duncan and Peter Pan, Raymond.
Oh, okay.
With the invisible, with the invisible wires. Well, it's just same. She's basically the same physique as Sandy Duncan. Well, I guess the wires would be a little thicker.
I'm not commenting.
God bless her. God bless her. I actually think she looks pretty good, Hillary, right now. I mean, I think she looked more tired when she was running for president. I think she looked good. I saw her on, she was on Bloomberg last week, and she looks she looks actually refreshed. I think during the campaign, anything nice about someone without you people getting down. They're rude. My staff is. Mondays, it's hard to get them into the pleasant frame of mind of you're taking on the new week. Anyway, I was in the woods, and here's what I have to say: when you're jogging with kids who are, I don't know, 4 decades younger, one would think that your children could run past you. Okay, and I'm like, Maria, You're dragging it. Let's go. Come on, you're dogging it and you're dragging it. And I turn around. Just as I turned around, I rolled my ankle. I don't know what the message was.
Oh, no.
And she's fast, of course. She's just dogging it. I rolled my ankle, Raymond, like when you roll it so bad and you feel everything on the inside just like, and it hurt so bad I actually almost vomited. I got so sick to my stomach. And this is the same ankle right before law school that I ripped all the ligaments in. And when I slid into third base when I was playing softball on the mall, I ripped those ligaments. It's never been the same. Like every 2 years or so, I do one of these rolls because it's never tight again. The ankle is never tight. It's always loose, right? It's loose, and that sucker rolled right. Oh, no. And then the best is when your kid comes over, you're writhing in pain on the ground in the middle of the nowhere. Are you okay? No. Yeah, I'm great. Are you okay? Yeah, no. I'm fine. Just keep running. Run right by me. No, I do think when your kid's 4 decades younger, they should be able to blow by you, right? I'm sorry, but of course I was like, you got to be kidding me. My mother, if I were running with my mother, God rest her soul, do the same age, I got blown right by her. But Maria's like, okay, we'll see what happens on the lacrosse field next week. I mean, come on, you got kids got to keep up. But then she can beat me now. That's the thing. She can run right by me now. So I'm not going to be running at all. Blake in Florida, line 1. Blake, go ahead, my friend.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Blake. What's going
on? Yes, I was just saying that I'm a millennial from like the millennial generation, and our family canceled our cable subscription. We just can't seem to watch these shows, and we definitely didn't tune into the Emmys because now they try to find such niche candidates to fit their liberal agenda that we never can tell who are the people that are on the air anymore.
Yeah, it seems like, Blake, that they're desperate to find nominees and winners who will forward the progressive, secular, humanist, left-wing agenda. It's not who really is the best actor. I mean, let's say you had a series that a little more traditional. Who's really the best? Or no, who's the best actor who can make our point? I do agree with you. That's a great point. Blake, so you cut the cord, so you don't have the cable package. I looked at my cable bill. I hadn't looked at my cable bill in a while. What on earth? This is like a mortgage.
You would swear they were coming to do the show live for you in the den.
Oh, what is this cable bill? I can see Chris is thinking of getting rid of it. He's like, I think I'm cutting the cable, but then for me, I have to watch the news shows. So, what do you do? But this is where the new technology that Raymond and I heard about a couple of weeks ago that is going to be coming in the next 2 or 3 years is going to blow up the whole cable model. And there's not this whole package it all together, bundle it all together. That's all going to be gone. So the cable companies better enjoy it while they have it, because as you can see, they're losing people every month. And every time you try to cancel, Chris tells me every time they try to cancel, they say, "Oh, well, we'll give you the next 6 months free." Oh, well, don't do that. We'll give you this 3 more set-top boxes and a Ginsu knives or something. They'll give you anything to stop canceling it. But it's expensive. I don't even like to do it anymore. I like the whole cable. All right, I swore I wouldn't talk about this Emmys for the whole segment.
Well, we've got to get to the UN. We've got lots to get to.
They're hoping Trump flames out at the UN, and they're completely slamming nationalism. Oh, that's a shock. And they want him to be a world leader this week. A world leader, not a nationalistic leader. Fat chance.
You sent a clear message to the media and the political elites last fall. You wanted new leadership that focused on the middle class, not the political class, on your lives, not theirs. Well, they didn't get the message. They've been working hard since Election Day to block the voice of the people and help Democrats regain control of Congress. My friends, that cannot happen. You voted to drain the swamp, to take money and power away from Washington, D.C., return it to the hardworking people of this country. Well, we better do that. To moms and dads struggling to make ends meet, young workers trying to save for their future. My friends, small business owners looking to grow and hire employees, we all have to go to the website taxcutsnow.com Send a letter to your member of Congress to support tax cuts. That's taxcutsnow.com. There's no exceptions, no wiggle room. Get these tax cuts through. Put the pressure on Congress. Go to taxcutsnow.com. That's taxcutsnow.com. The best way to avoid a Nancy Pelosi-led Congress in 2019, go to... This is what kills me. If you're going to be political, then you have to be funny. I think it's a crime when you try humor and you repeatedly fall flat. I mean, this was goose egg after goose egg after goose egg from Stephen Colbert.
Colbert's been doing this for years. His political humor always falls flat.
Oh, no.
Remember at the correspondence dinner when he bombed in front of George W. Bush?
Bombed. He's not funny. The only time he was funny is when he had Bill O'Reilly to play off of, when he was channeling Bill O'Reilly. But when that went away, I was like, who wants to hear from Stephen Colbert? It's a terrible interviewer, by the way. He's not a good interviewer. He's sycophantic. And I think they wanted me to go on for my new book, and I'm saying no. Why should I go on and sit with him? And I love when they say, oh, when you come on the Colbert Show, you can't be funny. Remember when they told me that, Raymond, you can't be funny?
Oh, that's right.
Remember that he made fun of the Obama Diaries because we have the thing about Michelle and her favorite foods?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's not racist. And it was her favorite foods that she said. French fries. She said she liked fries. She liked ribs. Remember, her favorite foods that she listed were fries, ribs, and I don't know what else.
Burgers.
Pizza or burgers. And so we went. I'm sorry, but that diary entry was one of the funniest ever. And he read it. And so after he read it, I'm like, the audience started laughing. It was really funny. And he's like, you can't be funny. Oh, okay. All right. Actually, I can be funny, and I'm funnier than you are. Byron York's going to join us. He's also very funny in that understated, geeky kind of way. He'll join us from the Washington Examiner. We'll get to all your calls. Don't touch that dial. It's always nice to hear compliments about your hair. It's certainly better than the reverse, when I kind of just look at you and don't say anything. Well, when your hair, maybe you swam a lot in the summer, or you're out in the sun, you didn't protect your hair. You really need to protect your hair from the sun's damaging rays. And when you use a hair dryer like I do and Raymond does, you got to take care of your hair. Split ends, flyaways. I'm telling you, Ovation Cell Therapy is the third bottle you must have in the shower, the best. It is so awesome. You only have to use that twice a week. And Ovation has been producing Ovation Cell Therapy for a few years now. It is my go-to. I travel with it, especially when I travel to New York. The air there I tend not to think is the best for my skin or hair. You're going to love it. So many of you have already been turned on to Ovation hair care products, but now it's very cool. You get a 15% off everything on the site. That means the voluminizing products, the conditioner, the shampoo. You just have to use my name, Laura Ingraham, in the survey at checkout. Again, it's very easy. Ovationhair.com, Laura Ingraham at checkout. You get 15% off. It's the biggest Emmys of all time. What?
I don't know why Sean Spicer would go out and humiliate himself by confirming the narrative of this audience.
And when you deliver a line in a live theater environment, Raymond, we learned this when we did the Obama Diaries theater thing in Minneapolis. You have to wait for the audience's reaction. You can't step on the audience. So when the audience is going, oh, you can't then scream it because they miss it.
Well, I doubt if the director worked with Sean Spicer. He was probably just saying, you just hold this podium and go out and say the line, and you're going to knock them dead, kid.
Steven Spielberg came out and was like, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to come out. Like, what he should have done, what would have been funny is to, throw pieces of the podium. If you want to be funny, then the podium should have been made out of, a styrofoam, and he should have, torn it up and thrown it at individual actors and actresses who were particularly nasty to Trump. That would have gone through the audience and just tossed. That might have been funny, but this wasn't funny at all. And then he's backstage posing for photographs with all these people. In a moment, we're going to talk to Byron York from the Washington Examiner. Kelly in Missouri on line 2 before we get to Byron. Kel.
You would have been much better. You would have not supported the narrative, and you would have actually been funny.
I think I would have, actually.
But I'm in Southwest Missouri, and when I saw Dolly Parton up there last night, the 9 to 5er ladies, they didn't really shock me because I knew how 2 of the 3 stood. But for her not to say anything, Southwest Missouri was for Trump big time.
Oh,
and
I
we have
missed this.
Stampede down here.
I missed this, Kelly. Tell us what happened. I missed it. Raymond didn't tell me about this.
We have it. No, we have we'll play it later.
Okay, well, we'll play it later, but we don't want to ruin it. But Dolly Parton, who's a conservative, by the way, but she's again in that environment, everyone's afraid. You know what the coolest thing would be? Dolly Parton to look to her left, look to her right. It's like, is this all? I mean, you people can't carry my coat, okay? Okay, like I've been performing since like 1953, okay? Like you kids just like came along 5 minutes ago. So I don't really need to hear about what your political views are, okay? So let's move on to some real talent. That's just ridiculous. We'll get into that later. We don't want to. I said I didn't want to do any of the Emmys, and here it is, the third segment. I'm still talking about the Emmys. Byron York is going to join us now from the Washington Examiner. Apparently, before they asked Sean Spicer to appear, they asked Byron to appear at the Emmys, but he put his foot down and he said only if he got to appear and dress up as Ty Cobb, the lawyer from the White House with that curly Q handlebar mustache. Can't keep his mouth shut. Hey, Byron, how you doing?
You know, I was worried that they might not really like me, and they were just using me for ratings.
Yeah.
So I said no.
Yeah, I think that was smart, though, Byron. But before we leave this tedious subject, I felt kind of bad for Sean Spicer. I wasn't mad. I felt bad for him. Like, dude.
Yeah, I think it was a bad idea. It was a lame presentation, and I doubt that he thinks his new friends in Hollywood will now say, you know, Sean's really okay. Maybe we were wrong about Sean. That's not going to happen. But clearly, people were very excited about it. You know, Mike Allen's newsletter on Sunday morning said tonight's Emmys are going to have a Washington-related stunt. We're not allowed to spoil the surprise, but if it goes off as planned, it'll be a big talker. So, I mean, they were very, very excited about it.
No, it was even Melissa McCarthy looked embarrassed for him. I mean, she was like, "Oh no, I do you better than you do you."
I mean, you know, there is something interesting going on. And I'm sure you've been reading and listening to this to people on the left and mainstream Democrats who have a desire to punish anyone who has worked for the Trump administration.
The great purge.
Yeah, and they can't be normalized by, you know, having a TV gig or getting a book contract or speaking at a university or any of those things that former government officials often do. And I think this is kind of playing into that, and you're seeing a lot of people on the left being very angry about the Emmys allowing Sean Spicer onto the stage. So, I mean, this is one of these things that's cutting in all sorts of different directions.
No, it's you realize, Raymond. I mean, I told Raymond this earlier, Byron. I felt so fortunate last night that I grew up when I did in the golden era of television in the 1970s, when there were real shows that real people watched, and it was, as Raymond said, destination programming. If you had 40, 50, 60, 70 million people watching certain television shows, and that was just the golden era of TV. And the kids who work for me they won't ever know it. It's sad, because I remember going to school on a Monday morning, and you'd be like, "Oh my God, did you see what?" And it was, you know, whatever the latest show was, and that was fun. I mean, you obviously, Byron, you're much younger than I am, so you don't remember any of this. But
I don't remember such a time. But actually, the only thing I tweeted out Emmys related last night. Yes. The only thing I tweeted out Emmys related last night was a picture that Governor Scott Walker had tweeted out of himself, holding in a Green Bay Packers jersey, holding a big bag of Doritos and a beer, saying, "Ready for the game." So not everybody was watching the Emmys.
No, it's going to be one of the lowest audiences ever. That's my prediction. Every year, Drudge posts that link. It's like lowest ever. It's like the congressional approval numbers. You don't think it can go lower, but then Mitch McConnell says something. He's down at 12%. So, Byron, speaking of, there's a lot we want to talk about. The media are hoping that Donald Trump flames out at the UN this week. He's in New York for the UN General Assembly. He's going to speak tomorrow. And this guy, Ian Bremmer, who's the elite favorite. There are a couple of elite faves. He's on the top of the list, Ian Bremmer. And he was talking about Donald Trump and whether Trump's nationalism is going to undercut his ability to be a leader of the world.
Look, what's interesting about Trump at the United Nations, when Trump gets insecure, he goes to his base. When he thinks the media is going badly, he goes to his base. On the international stage, he has no base. Even American allies privately look at Trump and say, who the hell is this guy? We don't trust him. We don't know about our relationship anymore. He'll be fine on the big stage, the UN General Assembly, because the speech is written for him. He reads speech well. The more formal it is, the fine.
Your reaction to that? They're hoping that this turns out to be more of a worldly Donald Trump.
Yeah. No, look, I think he's right in the sense that a lot of other world leaders and world bureaucrats dump on Trump all the time behind the scenes and sometimes in front of the scenes. But I think this is a real opportunity, this UN meeting, a real opportunity for Trump. And Nikki Haley and H.R. McMaster gave a briefing a couple of days ago about what Trump would be stressing. And it was not just peace and prosperity, but it was sovereignty and accountability, which is very consistent with an America First message, which is, the rest of the nations of the rest of the world should take care of themselves more and look less to the United States to take care of them. We've seen Kellyanne Conway talking about paying, the members of the United Nations need to pay more. The United Nations needs to reform itself, do something about that Human Rights Council, which often features some of the worst human rights abusers in the world. I mean, there's just a lot that Donald Trump can point to that needs to be fixed, and people can't really defend the status quo.
I still say one of his best moments of this 9 months or so, 8.5 months, Byron, is when he went to Europe. He had all the elites there, all the elites who had greenlit all these migrants to rush in across the borders and settle permanently in Europe. The Angela Merkel, the Macron, all. So he goes there and he said, I like all you guys, but the free ride's over. I think that was one of his best moments. I think back home people were cheering. Look, we're here for you. We're your ally. We're going to live up to our end of the bargain. We always do. But so you have to do the same thing. And I maintain that he gets pulled down the garden path of globalism. It's over for Donald Trump because he'll just be another Bush. Now, I don't see that yet, and I certainly hope I never see that. But they want to tug him that way with the promise of elite acceptance. Do they not, Byron?
Absolutely. And the message that he took to NATO, the message that you were just talking about, I mean, this is not only good with a domestic American political audience, it's the right thing to do. So, for Trump to get up there and basically talk, first of all, about his primary responsibility is ensuring American peace, American prosperity, and then ensuring that the rest of the world looks out for itself. I mean, these are perfectly consistent messages domestically and internationally.
There was a moment on, I think this was Friday, where UN Ambassador Nikki Haley was discussing the North Korea threat, another missile flying, because if it's Friday, Kim Jong-un would launch a missile that grazes Japan. So Nikki Haley, who's known to be much more of a neoconservative, she's a big pal of Marco Rubio, much more in line with the Bush's vision of foreign policy, she said this.
Was the president's fire and fury remark an empty threat?
It was not an empty threat. What we were doing was being responsible, where North Korea is being irresponsible and reckless. I said yesterday I'm perfectly happy kicking this over to General Mattis because he has plenty of military options. So if the United States has to defend itself or defend its allies in any way, North Korea will be destroyed. And we all know that. And none of us want that. None of us want war.
What about that, Byron? It's coming closer, I think, than most have to, the ultimate conclusion that war is inevitable with North Korea, which will be cataclysmic, of course, for probably the South Korean population. Hundreds of thousands will be killed. Who knows what China and Russia would do in response?
Well, this is something that some people in the administration have been saying. Privately, they would push back on this kind of commonplace saying that, there are no good options or no military options with North Korea, and they would say, yes, there are. There really are. They're bad. They're really bad if you're in South Korea. But we have military options, and I think what you saw kind of across the administration the last few days was to come out and start saying this in public, that there's still a lot diplomatically that can be done, but we're not going to sit here and say there's no military option, because there is.
Chuck Todd on Sunday, I know you were slavishly watching Meet the Press. He was talking about whether the conservatives would break with Trump over immigration. And I can tell you, from my listeners, I had 98% of them last week. 98% said things like betrayal, never forgive, pick a primary challenger now for 2020 if he doesn't live up to the wall and to the immigration pledge and does amnesty. And so this is what Chuck Todd said.
Laura Ingram's not going to accept defense. Rush Limbaugh may not accept
Trump voters are not listening to Laura Ingraham or even Breitbart the way that they're listening to Donald Trump. Remember, they were anti-Trump for a while, and they had to turn and become pro-Donald Trump when they realized that's where the movement was going.
What a dope. Who is she? Katie, turn the dial. Okay, what? Byron, you take it away. I wasn't pro-Trump. I only jumped on the Trump train when he was popular.
Well, I have to say, I think people went a little overboard about this whole Schumer-Pelosi meeting, in part because I think the AP got it wrong by sending out this bulletin on Wednesday night saying that, Pelosi and Schumer say they've got a deal, that Trump has made a deal, and then when you look at the note that Pelosi wrote her fellow Democrats, she said they had, quote, agreed to a plan to work out an agreement, which is classic Washington speak for saying we didn't agree on anything.
Yeah, but Byron, isn't it good? I think it's good to also drop the gauntlet with Donald Trump on issues like this early, because things have a way of getting away from us. Like these debates have a way of getting away from us, and days go by, and it's like, oh, people are fine with no wall. People are fine. People seem fine with this report that came out. So I see what you're saying, but it's also he's a consumer of media, and he does want to live up to his pledge to the Trump voters, and I think he was truly surprised by the blowback from Hannity, myself, and others, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the worst thing would be if Trump suddenly says, well, I guess, these other people in the White House are more like Democrats. Maybe they have a good point. That's my concern.
I think that most people who watch the campaign, and I think you'd agree with me on this, if you watch the campaign and what Trump said about DACA during the campaign, figure that he is ultimately going to agree to some sort of legalization of the 700,000.
Yeah, for what, though? That's my point. I don't have a problem with the legalization. Exactly. I have a problem with the deal. That was my point last week.
I talked to Tom Cotton a couple of weeks ago, and he said I would support legalization in return for the RAISE Act and
E-Verify and the wall
across the country.
Yeah, the trifecta. Byron, I'm glad you didn't waste your time going to the Emmys. I'm glad you said no to them. That was a smart move. You have very good judgment.
Decided to stay home.
But remember, I don't know the Trump voters as well as Katie Tour and Chuck Todd. I don't connect with them. Oh my God, I appreciate it. We'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. 855-40-LAURA. Don't go away.
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Oh, my gosh. All the elites are wishing that Donald Trump flames out on the world stage. He's at the UN at this reform event. Donald Trump just spoke briefly. He's going to speak to the General Assembly tomorrow. So that's going to be a big deal. And the question posed today on MSNBC was whether Donald Trump will live up to world leader status, or whether he will cling to his nationalist campaign promises and the America First approach. That was Ian Bremmer from the Eurasia Group. That's all you need to hear is the Eurasia Group, who, of course, is an old Clinton-Obama pal, and he's the elite's elite on foreign policy. So Trump goes to the UN and he says, look, I'd like to have a more peaceful world. I want the world to be more peaceful. I'm not someone who's going to start a bunch of wars like some of these other world leaders of itchy fingers. That's not me. I want the world to be more at peace. But that requires a strong America. Because if America is not strong, the world will grow more chaotic. We've seen that happen time and again. The bad actors in the world will take advantage of the vacuum and step into it. But when we see some of the neoconservative writers and thinkers on television today, they're all going to be yearning for the days of Bush, because Bush was so popular at the UN. Remember how unpopular he was? Oh, my God. The only time he was popular for 5 minutes was right after 9/11. Any other time, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was maybe the only time he was popular, but other than that, he was. I mean, but nobody that I know cares about whether the UN likes Donald Trump or not. They understand that it's like the United States is like the New York Yankees when the Yankees are good. Now, everyone likes to hate the Yankees. Everyone likes to hate the Patriots, whatever. Hate the best team. Well, until they need us. And then suddenly, oops. What? And so the elites, want to emerge from this week at the UN with the president weakened, where world elites, the Davos crowd, everybody goes to Davos, that those Davos attendees come away saying, populism, nationalism is in decline. We're back to the old days of globalism. We're back to the old days of the world community and the global citizen, because they've been trying to put the garbage can lid on the nationalist leaders and the rising populism across Europe. They've been trying to do that for some time. And they think because, UKIP is not a political force that somehow they're going to be able to beat back Brexit. They tried to do that till the last possible minute as well. But I think my prediction, Trump's going to, he's going to stand up for what he campaigned on. Look, we want a peaceful world, but America is my focus. And America is going to be stronger under my leadership, and that's going to be good for all of you. It's not going to be good if America goes down the tubes, I can tell you that.
It may be that President Trump's tweets and stupid statements might be sort of losing their gusto in the marketplace and lowering our place in the world and people discounting him. But I could see the leader of North Korea, who is equally potentially, imbalanced and hard to predict, reacting badly.
Okay, so Mika Brzezinski, Raymond, is now saying that Donald Trump is as imbalanced as Kim Jong-un because I guess he tweeted out that Rocket Man.
Right.
Tweet. I thought that was pretty funny, actually. I mean, it's humiliating to the Cabbage Patch president over there in North Korea. By the way, who told him that was a good haircut? Can anyone, I don't care if you're a communist or not. Who gives him that advice on hair? Isn't that
You don't like the fade.
Yeah, I don't like the fade. And then I don't like the short right above the ear, and then it goes to it's not slimming. He needs a slimming haircut. Haircuts for dictators. Wouldn't that be a funny segment? Sartorial advice for dictators. Hairstyles for dictators. You want a softened look. If he wants to look ferocious, he makes him just look like a goofball. I don't understand why he thinks that's a good cut. But the question, by the way, that Mika Brzezinski and all these other people on MSNBC is the president going to listen to Nikki Haley? He has the generals, but he has all these great generals, but will he listen to these wonderful generals? Because it's Trump the tweeter. Will he listen? I mean, come on. The generals. Oh. So now the generals are their own demographic group.
Well, and look, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of leaks coming out claiming that he's not actually going to pull out of that climate change Paris Accord, that he should back off of his heavy push against Kim Jong-un, that diplomacy should be tried in a more passionate way. All of this is kind of second-guessing from within the administration. So they're fueling it from within, and then the media collaborators are amplifying their static. The question is, will the president stand firm? There are reports in the Wall Street Journal today that President Donald Trump's top economic advisors are briefing major international partners today on the administration's stance on climate change, claiming that there were signals over the weekend that the U.S. was exploring ways to remain in the 2015 pact.
No, then they batted that away, though. I think I saw that, and my heart skipped a beat. But then I think it was Conway or Huckabee Sanders tweeted out that there's no change. We're not in the we're not in the no change. The White House the White House just announced that. For a second, I thought Trump was Boris Johnson from a distance on television. Boris Johnson from London. They do have the same hair, though Johnson's is a bit more unruly. Why is my eye gravitating toward the hairstyles? And I said the same thing about Tony Blair. Boy, age has not been kind to him. Do you see him all over TV today, Raymond?
Yeah, I did.
Poor old Tony Blair is trying to reassert himself.
Trying to turn Brexit back.
Yeah, Trump's tapping a lot of people on the shoulders. He does that. It's like just so he can get by them. He does that. Hey, how you doing? Like he taps them on the shoulders and keeps going. I see that as he's mixing it up with some Indian leaders on the live feed of Donald Trump at the UN. John Kelly, the chief of staff, is about 6 yards, 5 yards behind the president. You can get the sense that he wants to get closer to the president so he can overhear any exchanges that are then later reported. It's preposterous. So anyway, that's where we are in that. We have news out of St. Louis we have to get to. As if St. Louis didn't have enough problems after the Michael Brown fiasco, where he was killed after that incident in the convenience store, and then he was shot by Darren Wilson. Am I remembering his name? We never heard from that police officer again. His life was ruined. And then, of course, we found out that the stories about that were totally false 2 years ago, and now they're back in St. Louis disagreeing with a verdict. Another police shooting. They're disagreeing with another verdict. And when they disagree with a court ruling, they have free license to destroy the businesses in their neighborhoods. How does that make sense? Violent Black Lives Matter protesters clashed with police after ex-St. Louis cop Jason Stockley was acquitted of first-degree murder in the 2011 shooting death of drug dealer Anthony Lamar Smith. So at the time, Smith was attempting to flee police and slammed his vehicle into the police cruiser and took off. And then there was this dangerous high-speed chase, and he ended up dead. Here's a clue. Here's a clue on how to stay alive in dealing with the police. Don't ram a police cruiser. Be a drug dealer and then flee the scene. But so it used to be like Rosa Parks. She did the benevolent, admirable protests at the lunch counter. Of protesting the lack of civil rights for African Americans in the South, right? Or getting the being put in the back of the bus. Right. And what now the great civil rights struggle is a drug dealer who rammed his car into a police cruiser and then fled the scene. So we've gone from Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, to Anthony, whatever his name is, Anthony Lamar Smith, who somebody they want to stand up and say, "Oh, how could you have done this to this man?" That is just. It's become a pathology with these Black Lives Matter protesters. They want chaos, though. They don't want resolution. They want chaos.
Killer cops to jail. The whole damn system is guilty as hell.
Hell in jail don't rhyme. Oh, no.
Oh, Lord.
No, they tried to rhyme hell with jail. That didn't work. So local businesses had to cancel all these, cancel events they were doing, and they had to shut down some businesses.
U2 had to cancel their concert because there weren't enough cops.
No, so the things that can bring economic development into the community, they just aren't. They just get rid of them. Okay, well, fine. U2 can cancel their show. Businesses can close down. They're going to fire people. People don't have an ability to make a living.
I do not remember stating that we or I are going to kill this. I think, don't you know it? The first time that I heard that was when I met with the FBI, and I gave them the same answer that I'm giving you now, which was I don't recall saying it, but I never denied it. I can tell you with absolute certainty.
No, that was a police officer who was relieved, obviously, of the verdict. That's not really the point, though. The point that I want to make is they're burning down buildings.
Yeah.
As a civil rights issue. The police comments notwithstanding, the court ruling does not give you license to destroy a community. That's what we want people to focus on. Lives Matter is a terrorist organization and should be classified as such. Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Black Lives Matter and Antifa work in some cases, I think, together to cause chaos. It's not so. Is Black Lives Matter in the St. Louis area to figure out why we have such a problem with fatherlessness, where kids are roaming the streets without a single father or father figure in their lives? Is there any Black Lives Matter work on that? No.
This is one of the protesters. This woman named Cori Bush, who's a social worker and activist, quoted in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. She said, "The message is simple: stop killing us. Black folks say, stop killing us." But meanwhile, the St. Louis County Police Department are tweeting out pictures saying, "We requested assistance after peaceful protests turned violent when debris was thrown at officers." I mean, this is a shop windows broken, cars overturned. I mean, it's a real mess there.
Well, and I think, again, the same businesses that were burned and looted during the Michael Brown case are now wondering, are they going to have more problems? 80 people were arrested. The police have had enough. They're done with this. They're just done with all this. By the way, there was a I tweeted this out. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, because a lot of the stuff that I managed to publicize on Twitter, we don't get a chance to talk about on the show. Raymond, maybe you saw this when I tweeted it out. I think it was earlier this morning. There was this individual, I believe it was in San Diego. Maybe someone on my staff can look at my Twitter and remind me if it was San Diego. I think it was. There was an elderly woman in a mechanized wheelchair, and she was reaching to get something in a grocery store shelf from her mechanized wheelchair.
It was San Diego.
San Diego. She's in her 80s. It looked like 80s, right?
Yep.
A woman comes behind her and removes her purse from in a basket. You know, she has a basket under her seat.
On a scooter. She's on a little scooter.
It's a mechanized scooter wheelchair thing. Removes her purse and walks out. You know, I know it seems like a small thing. It maybe say, why am I even talking about this? Because I think it shows such a lack of feeling and such a depravity to prey on the elderly or children, the disabled, and she's kind of disabled and elderly. So they have that woman's face. They pulled it up on the closed circuit television, and they got that woman's face. That thing has been retweeted. I retweeted it. Other people are retweeting it. They're going to find that woman. I want to find that woman who stole that purse of that woman. Anyone who preys on the elderly, the disabled, or children, I have no words for you. It makes my blood boil. So that's why I raised that. And I see this. What happened in St. Louis? Same thing. These poor business owners trying to make a living. They're trying to do the right thing by having a business and helping the community. What does Black Lives Matter? Goes in there, and it's like free reign. You got free reign to burn it all down. That's going to help the black community a lot. They got no jobs, and they can't make a living if you burn down the buildings. That is, Martin Luther King would be happy about that today. How about Rosa Parks? Should be cheering you? I don't think so.
I want to talk about the most important thing you can do right now to get our economy and our country moving and help stop a Nancy Pelosi-led Congress in 2018. You voted last year to drain the swamp, to return money back to the hardworking taxpayers and small business owners of this country. You voted for tax cuts, but nothing's happened. That's why I'm urging you to go to taxcutsnow.com. Send a message to Speaker Ryan, Senator McConnell. Let them know that you voted for tax cuts and you want tax cuts by Thanksgiving Day. No excuses, no exceptions. I need all of you listening to do your part. Make your point loud and clear. You need tax cuts. You need this done. No exceptions, no excuses. I want you to go to taxcutsnow.com and send the link to 10 friends. Ask them to do their parts too. That's taxcutsnow.com. From all of us to Congress, do your job. Taxcutsnow.com. The most important thing you can do right now to get our economy and our country moving. That's taxcutsnow.com.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Sowing chaos, that's what they do. That's unfortunately, that's what we've come to expect from Black Lives Matter. And Antifa sprinkled in, I'm sure so. Drudge has a funny banner headline. And the winner is Trump. President dominates TV's biggest night. Yeah, I wonder what... Yeah, I think he's got to look at this And he's got to say to himself, well, they're talking about me. I actually think, in looking back over the last couple of years where he entered the political scene in June of 2015, I mean, he has managed to dominate the conversation across politics and the culture. I mean, unlike anyone I've ever seen. Raymond, do you agree with me on that? I mean, moving away from St. Louis for a moment. I mean, he was the Emmys last night.
He took over the Emmys, and here's the sad fallout for CBS and Stephen Colbert. It is the lowest. This is just coming in. Emmys new all-time low in the ratings.
Well, I told you. I mean, if people want politics, they'll tune into cable news. They want entertainment, well, they'll go watch an old I Love Lucy or something. You're listening to The Laura Ingraham Show. We'll be back shortly. We have a lot more to get to. John Bolton's going to join us. The world leaders gather. You'll have a plethora of other courses, very short courses, to sign up for, to watch yourself in the sanctity of your own home. It's great. My friends at Hillsdale College, just go to lauraforhillsdale.com. And I'm not calling him. See, somehow, HR Puffin stuff. Raymond, were you the one who started calling him Puffin stuff? That was not HR. It's unusual to have a name HR. The only other one that I'm aware of is HR Puffin stuff.
Yes, a major figure in that.
It is a major cultural icon. Do we know what adult played HR Puffin stuff in the actual show?
No, I will look that up.
Yeah, we should look that up, because that clearly, we talk about daytime Emmys. That really was classic American television. So H.R. McMaster's, the national security, of course, council advisor. I mean, he's basically saying, yeah, we'll go to war. Will we? Interesting question. Donald Trump said that we had been, I think far too stretched militarily during the Bush years. We got involved in obviously 2 wars. We're still in both countries. We have 9,000 more people going to Afghanistan, more troops, special ops trainees in Iraq, special forces in Syria. And by the way, speaking of Syria, we have word that the chief suspect in the tube brown paper bag bombing is a Syrian refugee. So that's some more information for you. But Nikki Haley and McMaster seem pretty confident that we'll be going to war if the Cabbage Patch president doesn't abandon his nuclear ambitions. But I don't get any sense at all that he's abandoning anything. Joining us now, John Bolton, who gets a little nostalgic at this time comes around and it's the UN General Assembly. He gets very nostalgic for his days at the United Nations. I know it. He joins us now. Hey, John, how are you?
Good. I'm not losing any sleep over the fact I'm not there anymore. I can tell you that.
Oh, God. I mean, the president spoke at some reform committee event very briefly this morning, John, and Nikki Haley was leading the conversation and thanking all of our allies and Uruguay and all these other countries. And I do hear the lead up to Trump's General Assembly speech tomorrow is whether he will back away even ever so slightly from his nationalist populist stance and become more of a world leader. What's your sense on what will unfold tomorrow?
Well, the White House has been briefing that the themes are going to be American security, American prosperity, and American sovereignty. And I'd love to see what he says on sovereignty. To me, this is a very big issue. You and I have talked about this many times. I've been writing on it for 20 years. So I hope we do see something interesting there. But, the idea that, as Nikki Haley said today, there's a new day at the UN, reform has set in, I think it's a mistake from her point of view. Because honestly, in a year when nothing has changed, she's going to regret saying that. But I think the president's got to be tough on the UN. I think he has to lay out what he expects, which isn't going to happen, but I think he ought to lay it out. When George W. Bush used to come up for his speeches to the UN, he referred to it as his annual trip to the Wax Museum, because that was the reaction he got from the from the countries listening to the speech, and I expect it'll be pretty much the same tomorrow.
Last week, I think it was on Friday, maybe Thursday, over at the State Department, Heather Nauert, who's the spokesperson at the State Department, was asked about whether the sanctions against North Korea were really significant. I think the Trump administration has come to believe that while it's great that Russia and China signed off on the UN Security Committee to these enhanced sanctions, North Korea is still getting fuel from both China and Russia. Yet Heather said, no, I'm not going to go against the president, she said, but we think these are serious sanctions. Are they really serious sanctions?
That's ridiculous. The resolution itself capped oil exports to Korea at current levels. Now, here's an interesting fact. China has not published its oil export statistics to Korea since 2013. So we don't know what the cap is, and therefore there's no way to enforce it. But I think what you're pointing to really is an even more serious problem within the Trump administration. I think the president takes the North Korean nuclear threat very seriously. It's not at all clear that the State Department does. Yesterday on Face the Nation, Secretary Tillerson said that all of our pressure was designed to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table for what he called constructive, productive dialogue. I'm speechless at how to respond to it. That's what we've been trying to do for 25 years. That's why we're at the point when they've almost got deliverable nuclear weapons. And what really underlined it to me is an absolutely stunning op-ed in this morning's New York Times by the Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Abe, who said, and I quote, more dialogue with North Korea would be dead end, which is absolutely right. There's nothing more to say to Kim Jong-un and his diplomats. That's 180 degrees away from what Rex Tillerson was saying as recently as yesterday morning. So I think it's another reason why this speech is important for the president. He's been dogged by the dissonance among his advisors on national security, the failure to get command over the bureaucracy. So tomorrow's an opportunity to pull it together.
John, you understand the State Department rings of influence, and I want to get my listeners to really get this issue and why it's important. It's not just some arcane staffing issue. So underneath the Secretary of State, you have the Deputy Secretary of State. It's that guy, what's his name? John Shannon, is that right?
Right.
Okay, and then underneath him, you have another individual who is, I can't remember the title, but that person...
There are 6 undersecretaries, right, and then under that there are about 30 assistant secretaries, and then it goes down from there to total about 70,000 people altogether.
Right.
Worldwide.
From what I gather, the third person, there's a deputy, and then there's one other principal.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Undersecretary for Political Affairs, yes.
Thank you.
A career guy. Yes,
right, and that person, I understand, currently is a former diplomat who is now who has also worked for the Obama administration.
In that same job, right?
Yes, and now he's that. And then there are all these undersecretary positions, undersecretary for the Western Hemisphere, undersecretary for Latin America, Asia, et cetera, et cetera. Those positions, those undersecretary positions, are not filled with Trump people. They are filled with acting undersecretaries. Oftentimes, those individuals are interacting with world leaders, their foreign secretaries, et cetera, or staff. They don't even agree with the Trump agenda. And so they're in these meetings with foreign officials, and they're rolling their eyes, according to people who were in the room that told me this. They're rolling their eyes when Donald Trump's name is mentioned. Now, how big a problem is that?
It's huge, and
it's huge. We lost what you said, so you said it's huge. Go ahead.
It's huge, yes, because what it means is Trump doesn't have full control of the State Department. The way a president exercises control over the bureaucracy is to get as many of his people into these key positions that you've mentioned some of as he can, because then they are loyal to him. They know what his policies are. They carry them out. The State Department, like other government departments, like a big aircraft carrier. It's not that it's filled with Obama holdovers. It's filled with people who have a culture that says to them, we should be running foreign policy, not these political appointees who come in on top of us. So it's perfectly understandable as a human reaction. What they were doing the day before Trump was inaugurated, they're going to do the day after he was inaugurated unless they're told to do something differently. So by not staffing the department, we're not talking about large numbers of people. I mean, counting ambassadors sent overseas, a couple hundred political appointees max in a bureaucracy of 70,000. And right now, political appointees at the department, including lower level staffers and whatnot, I don't know, maybe 40, maybe less than that. But in terms of the president's own appointees, only 2 or 3. So this is a big problem in getting advice that's contrary to what the Obama administration was doing. It's no wonder that Tillerson is captured by the bureaucracy. He has so few people around him. All he hears is what the career people are telling him, as is, unfortunately, also the case at the National Security Council. Look, if you're a State Department worker and you want to be on the National Security Council staff in the Obama administration, it means it's because you support what the Obama administration is doing. And if you're still there a year after a new president takes place, you haven't changed your mind and are now trying to pursue the new president's policies. That's why there's some continuity at the NSC, and there should be, I think, right. But even a lot of the career people turn over when a new president comes in. That hasn't happened. And it's also true to a lesser extent at the Defense Department and the intelligence community. So Trump sits there in the White House, the bureaucracies, like those big aircraft carriers, are still on course from January the 19th when they were in the Obama administration.
And before we let you go, Theresa May over the weekend was essentially saying that it's not helpful to jump to conclusions about the terrorists who are making the lives of the working class Brits unpleasant, to say the least, with these attacks, as we saw on the tube last week. Now we find out that the chief suspect is a Syrian refugee. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, and had been held by Scotland Yard a week or 10 days ago. So that Trump's concern that the law enforcement in Britain had their eye on the guy but didn't do anything about it turns out to be correct. Look, Theresa May, to me, is a big disappointment. And here I think she's covering up from the days when she was Home Secretary, which is like Homeland Security in the United States. These are failures that could be attributed back to her tenure there and others as well. It was a disappointing reaction from our close ally.
Yeah, well, and again, raises the issue of admission of refugees, how that's changing the culture of Europe, and whether they can truly vet people who are coming into the country by what means? Are we vetting their intentions?
They can't.
They
can't, and neither can we.
No. John Bolton, it's always great to talk to you, a former UN ambassador, as the president is set to deliver his speech tomorrow before the General Assembly at the United Nations. We'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Indeed, it looks like the lowest ratings probably ever for the Emmys after they went way political on Donald Trump. So we'll get to that. And what is happening to Trump's childhood home? Had no idea what he was talking about with the Syrian refugee program, suspending it. Except the guy who's accused of the tube bombing in London from Friday is a, what, Raymond? Syrian refugee? No, he was clearly, he was an aggrieved Presbyterian.
No, he's an 18-year-old Syrian refugee. And the Yahya Farouk.
Is his first name Yah, his middle name Yah, and then his last name Farouk? Or is is the first name Yahya? Yahya Farouk. Okay, so he's 18. He's obviously just upset about, he was obviously just upset about Trump's, upcoming speech at the United Nations. So who could blame him for what he did, right? I mean,
let's not forget he basically put a bomb in a bag on the tube last week and set it off. And though no one was killed, a lot of people were burned. One poor woman, her whole body was burned. But they caught him boarding a ferry and they arrested him. But you have to be watchful. Oh. It's in the national interest for all these countries to be watchful.
Now Italy's getting criticized because it's pausing some of its the refugees coming in. Italy is now just teeming in Islamic refugees. Okay, so soon the call to prayer will be heard over the the Angelus prayers near the Vatican. By the way, Trump's childhood home, speaking of refugees, his childhood home in New York has some new occupants headed over the weekend. Refugees who shared their stories as a way to draw attention to the refugee crisis. Convenes, oh no. The International Anti-Poverty Organization, Oxfam, which, by the way, has been, since I was at Dartmouth, Oxfam had been infiltrated by the far left. Oxfam rented it Saturday and invited 4 refugees to talk with journalists. I'm sure they weren't handpicked as the best of the best or anything, right? They're all... Yahya Farouk's type wasn't probably featured in that conversation.